Oregon coast is the quaint town of Astoria, founded in 1811. We heard the trolley tour was a must-do,
A trolley.
Trolleys are cool.
so we went ahead and headed out. The all-volunteer-led trolley, named Old 300, was built in 1913 and nowhere in sight. Rather than wait for it, we headed down the 3-mile route. Fun fact, Astoria is the backdrop of many movies, including The Goonies, Free Willy, and Kindergarten Cop.
I'm John Kimball, your new kindergarten teacher.
And then I'm for the garlic bread.
You need a bigger table?
It'd be like that with these smaller tables. Sauces.
Look at that.
Yeah. Go. And then I usually leave the bucket. Don't know where to put it, but.
Can you help sign it?
No, not ready. Let's see.
All right, cheers.
I can't believe I ate the whole thing.
Someone meant that you would kidnap a man and force him to labor aboard a ship. So if there was a ship outbound to sea and it needed another crew member, sailor runners would usually have a shady agreement with a bartender. And a bartender at this Portway Tavern, it's the building off to your right that says cocktails there off to the side. Just imagine the water came right up to the edge of the hillside. There was no flat land here, it was all water. So that's why there was that trapdoor in the floor. So an unsuspecting young man would be singled out. He was somebody usually new to town. He was served drinks until sufficiently drunk, tossed out the trapdoor into a waiting rowboat below. The unlucky lad would find himself lying flat on his back on the deck of a ship, staring at the sails, finding himself 3 sheets to the wind and bound for Shanghai. Women running boarding houses were also in on the practice. There was a local woman, and she's known to have used this method to get rid of her husband. Twice, in fact.
Directly ahead of us is Bowie Beer. June of last year, their riverside wall collapsed into the river. As we go by it, there's a couple windows that are not yet covered over, so if you get a chance, look through the windows to see what happens when a wall falls into the river. It's a shame that that wall collapsed for a couple of reasons. One, the trolley couldn't go past here last year because the engineers were scared this 40,000-pound old gal would shake the rest of the building into the river. We get more than 2,000 ships a year coming through. But look at, on the right side, the decking. Astoria was built on pilings and decking, like you see right here at the base of this red top. Small park is what it is. Hundreds of thousands of pilings driven down. Shops, canneries, hotels, streets, stables, you name it, all built on pilings and wooden decking. This concrete and brick building we're passing was built in 1882. It did not burn at the 1922 fire because it is concrete and brick and it goes right down to the river bottom, so the fire could not get underneath it. Right now it's being repurposed as a distillery. The condos to our right were built in the middle 70s, the last residential units permitted to build over the river. The original builder had problems selling the units and had to auction them off towards the end because mortgage rates were very high. Insurance companies weren't thrilled with a ship ending up in their bedroom. So he ended up auctioning them off for about $40,000 a piece. Now you can buy a one bedroom for about $400,000. We're crossing a trestle over the water. Almost the entire run from Portland behind us, 100 miles, to Warrenton, 20 miles ahead of us, was built on trestles because it was all swamp, marsh, and river water. But real quick on the right, right down here by the river, there's a world famous Astoria beach. Nude bathing, January and February.
Astoria is a town of many firsts. It was the first permanent U.S. settlement west of the Rockies. It has, of course, the first post office, and it is the birthplace of cable television. If you enjoy TV, it was invented right here in Astoria. There was a gentleman by the name of Ed Parsons. He went to a broadcast convention in Chicago in 1948, picked up this newfangled thing called a television, put an antenna on top of our skyscraper, that Astor building, found he could get a signal out of Seattle, and voila, he had TV. Except that all of his neighbors and friends also wanted to watch. He got really tired of everybody sitting in his living room, so he tried to figure out a way how to get this antenna signal to everybody else. So he started running cables to other bars and homes and would charge $5 per month for the service, eventually putting an antenna at the top of the hill up there where the Astor column is, and thus cable television was born. And here's another little weird oddity off to the right here, this fence line. Those are whale harpoons. One of the last commercial whaling stations in the United States was located out in Warrenton, and these harpoons were shot from a cannon until the U.S. banned all commercial whaling in 1972. It is a gorgeous day in Astoria. If you look off to your right, up on the top of the hillside where you don't see a tree, that of course is the Astoria column. It was built in 1926. It's 125 feet tall, and it has 164 steps to climb to the top. Gives you great 360-degree views of the whole area. On a day like today, you can see everything, so definitely go up there. It is free to climb the steps, but we do charge $5 per car, but it's good for the entire year. And everybody always thinks, well, this hillside's a great place to build some houses. Well, back in the 1950s, that whole hillside was covered with homes. Astoria had been experiencing a very wet winter season. People left for work in the morning and came home to a different address because their home had slid down to the bottom. And this brick building here, that is the old railroad station. In 1898, the first train station arrived here, but this depot was built in 1924 at the peak of the rail activity. You notice there's two big sides to it. It's because there was a men's and a women's section. Not because they couldn't sit together, it's just that only the men were allowed to smoke. So it was really a smoking and a non-smoking section. The station served passengers on a regular basis, and up to 8 trains per day came here, including a daddy train during the summer months, which brought working fathers back and forth on the weekends between Portland and the coast. We're getting a really great view of the anchor ships out here off to the left and the one over in the river. That's because they're waiting for cargo to be ready to dock, or ready to dock to get, avoid the $1,000 per day fee if you were good to go up to the ports upriver in Longview or Vancouver or Portland. How much of the red you see on the hull will show you if it is empty or not, so these ships are empty. The Columbia River is one of the top exporters of wheat. 40% of the world's wheat comes right out of the Columbia River. This is Mill Pond. When it was first built, it was built to look like an old Scandinavian village where no two homes are alike. It was a plywood mill that operated until the 1990s, until the area was cleaned up and these homes were built. Got a fun story of this building off over the river. Locally it's known as Big Red. It actually used to be a little bit bigger than it is now. It had a third story. It's an old net drawing loft. It was built in 1897. That means that boats would navigate underneath the building. They would hoist their nets up, and they would be dried and repaired between uses. This is important, folks, because the natural fibers would rot or mildew if not dried. Later, this building became an artist studio for world-renowned painter Royal Nebuchadnezzar. But during the storm of December 2007, we had winds that reached over 150 miles per hour. Nebuchadnezzar and his assistant were trapped. The third floor blew off, and he lost over $1 million in artwork to the river. They finally escaped by lashing themselves to a ladder and crawling across to safety. Up to your left there, that's East Mooring Basin. It's two large breakwaters which protect the basin here. It used to be home to a lot of fishing boats. Now it's home to a very large herd of male California sea lions. Anybody here from California? Could you please take one with you? Unfortunately, that's been used as a tactic to send them back, but they have some internal GPS and they just come right back to Astoria. The fellows here are here most of the year, but during the summer months they go back to California in search of a mate.
They're back there where the boats are.
When they are unlucky in love, they return here, and you know it because they act like bachelors. They are loud, smelly, and eat all of the salmon. The hotel here even passes out earplugs so you get some rest at night. Many tactics have been used, including floating orca, mechanical orca, and some beach balls. So they do cause a lot of damage to boats and the docks. In fact, they sink them. But you'll see quite a few out there now. Yeah. Every once in a while, you'll hear a story of people encountering them here on the river walk. Never approach them because they move fast. They may weigh 700 to 1,000 pounds, but they move fast. Once we hit the height of the fishing season, this whole area will be covered with trucks and boats coming back and forth off this ramp. And that fishing station there is really fun to watch because people will hold up their catches to the trolley so we can see how large of a catch they got that day. So we're coming up on 39th Street. That will be the end of this one portion of the trolley. We will be turning around and heading back, just where we came from. You'll see out over the water there, that old building was the third cannery built in Astoria around 1875. The J.O. Hanthorne Company, and it's the only remaining cannery building in Astoria. It's now home to Rogue Brewing Company, Coffee Girl, other businesses, and there's even a free museum if you get a chance to walk out there and explore. It's a lot of fun.
visited the Bumblebee Tuna and Salmon Canning Museum. In 1899, 7 Astoria salmon canners formed the Columbia River Packers Association. In 1910, they created the Bumblebee Tuna name.
Bumblebee Tuna?
Bumblebee, bumblebee, bumblebee!
Now several other businesses share the building with the museum. In the factory's heyday, women held most of the cannery jobs and kept the factory going.